Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm going to send a message out, and as you come on here, if you don't mind saying hello to somebody so we know we're broadcasting out, it would be awesome. Whoever's on a computer, they can see the chat box. Thank you for joining us today. We have, as usual, we have an interesting nexus of connectivity of how we got to know C Street. Josh, who is on the call here, has been a family office participating from time to time in Family Office Insights events and paying attention to what we're doing from time to time, and we're grateful for that. And Josh, his family office has invested in the company that you're about to see. And so we thankfully have a fair amount of that type of deal flow where a company has been invested by a family office and they come in and qualify and with an attempt to meet other family offices for investment or resources or we're grateful to have Josh with us today. And a little housekeeping on Zoom, which I'm sure you're all very aware of by now. Make sure we are announcing that we're super happy to have you have questions along the way and throughout. We'll get to them promptly. And please don't be bashful about that. We're happy to engage in those questions. We can't see or hear you, so you have to write them in the chat box or the Q&A. You can raise your hand there. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. We are recording this for the record, and it'll be available in the Office Insights YouTube channel if you share it with others or review it. Also, if there's people in your orbit and your world that would benefit from hearing from Josh and Harley after this, we're welcome to connect them directly, and we'll make sure that you have their information. So with that, I'm going to ask Harley to give a little bit of his background and chat with Josh a little bit, and then move into the presentation. Thank you all again for being here today. Harley?
Great. Yes, thank you, Arthur, for the intro, and thanks everyone for attending. Quick background on myself. I've been in the industry, which is the network software and telecommunications technology industry, for approximately 30 years. My focus has been on software systems that provide automation capability over large-scale telecommunication networks and application-based services. My last company, Linesider, which I founded as well, was acquired by Cisco in 2010, at which point we integrated into Cisco's software division, and I was put in charge of Cisco's worldwide CTO office for global tier 1 telecommunications, cloud technology, and managed services globally. And it was in that position that I saw a requirement to redesign the automation systems that were used at that point in time to provision communication services to end users, both businesses and consumers and mobile users, for the purpose of automating the ability to scale those services and automating their management to make sure that they were more reliable and, through automation, much more profitable for the carrier service provider businesses, and left to found C Street to build our StratOS platform, which is now in production and delivers that automation capability and scale, which we'll talk about today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Josh. Josh?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Josh Roach here with Lloyd Capital Partners. I may know some of you before. We've invested along with a number of single-family offices and co-investment deals. I spent 15 years in technology before I joined the family office, so know a little bit about the space. And we found it helpful to partner with other family offices to do club-type deals and deals in our specialty. And I was introduced to Harley probably 4 or 5 years ago. We got comfortable with his track record and the solutions that C Street was providing to the marketplace. We got excited about the opportunity to join a business that could scale and solve real business problems in cloud security and infrastructure as a security. So we're fully invested in this company, and we speak to management quite often, and we're taking the opportunity today to kind of share what we're doing in the hopes that others may have some questions and want to learn more about the business, and happy to answer questions along the way. Our core investment mandate is to invest with people that have demonstrable track records, that make money for investors in the past, and solve problems that are in excess of $10 billion. And those check the box here with C Street. And we've had a good run so far, and the future looks pretty bright. So with that, I'll hand it back to Harley, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the audience from an investor perspective as gone along for the ride in this business. Thanks.
Great, thank you,
Thanks,
Josh.
Harley, before you continue, turn down the volume on your computer a little bit. There's a little bit of, we can hear it off your computer while you're talking a little bit. Should be fine now.
Is that better, Arthur, I hope?
It's a little better. You'll be fine. It's not that bad.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's dive into C Street. So what we're focused on with the platform that we've developed called StratOS at C Street is enabling large-scale, mass-scale communication services that are distributed. And the problem set that the whole world is really wrestling with today is that there are different silos of technologies involved in delivering digital services for business, for communications, and for cloud applications and social networking. The management of all those individual silos of technology is largely manually mediated at the service provider industry, which leads to significant costs and operating expenses, profit constraints, and lags to bring new services to market. As we're all experiencing today through the COVID-19 pandemic requirements, which include social distancing, we're seeing an accelerated use case for the type of distribution for the services that we enable, which are things like work from home and mobile workforce, where employees are essentially disaggregated and distributed to the home. And the original scaling of managing technology in a large office that houses tens, hundreds, or thousands of employees is now distributed out to individual services that have mass scale requirements and security requirements. So we have an acceleration of scale and distribution for digital services. The requirement to meet that scale is to disintermediate manual intervention with technology through automation. That's what C Street does. So a little background on C Street and our delivery of that platform. We were founded in 2012. We're headquartered in Massachusetts, here in Wakefield. We're approximately 42 employees. Roughly half of the company is focused on R&D. We have 200 plus man years of experience. We have a very deep, experienced executive team and engineering team involved in the company. We have one very large platform process patent that has lots of extensions to it at the services level and automation level. So we have a patented platform, and we have blue chip customers that are in production and channel partners today. We're in production at a large scale with Comcast, Cox Communications, Telstra, and we're moving large-scale global services into the market with Teradata, data as a service, and with a top-tier security vendor. That's a $30 billion security vendor that we're under non-disclosure with. Moving to the next slide. as we discussed a little bit before, the market catalysts for autonomous service delivery have to do with managing all of the technologies that we talked about that are manually mediated. They're represented in the left, and with the scale and distribution of digital commerce and workforces and users out to the edge of networks, mainly because of mobility, there's a whole new generation of technology-based services that are in demand right now, and their characteristics are mass scale and mass distribution. And that's where the requirement and the necessity for end-to-end automation of services comes into play. It has to do with the scale and distribution of services that drive digital commerce and communications. This is the problem set that C Street's focused on. So what we have developed in StratOS is a platform that ties together all of those technology categories that we talked about and converts them up and into services that are directly consumable or can be deployed into an operation to automate the operation. You can see the categories that we integrate with to develop services. They're the traditional infrastructure categories that many of us are familiar with. Operational support systems, that's a $39 billion market segment in that silo. Network infrastructure at $45 billion. SD-WAN is at a services layer at $2 billion, a very nice emerging market that we're focused on right now. And that includes firewall services and other points, other security technologies that are required for secure communications. So what StratOS does is tie all these systems together in the form of an autonomous service, and then that service can be scaled millions of times and deployed on a cloud-native distributed platform, and the service itself is automated, and that's what StratOS provides. The significance of that transformation value that C Street StratOS provides is represented in the implementation of the services. They're model instances that we build once on StratOS and then sell and deploy at massive scale. So examples of services that we build and deploy at massive scale are business applications as a service, operations as a service. You're seeing use cases here that are actual use cases. For example, at Cox, we have an operational service model that manages the video encoding cloud for Cox Communications across all of North America. That's nationwide. All of their high definition 4K digital channels and all of the cloud encoding operations are managed by an operational service model that automates everything at Cox. At Telstra, their network infrastructure services are presented through StratOS as a service to the products that they sell in the form of business communications and consumer communications. SASE, which is Secure Access Service Edge, is an emerging new market for security services that provide security to mobile users, mobile offices, and homes. And it's the application of security to network connectivity, generally for business communications. This is a particular market segment that's very important to supporting new business operations that are distributed to the home that have been accelerated through COVID-19 and the global pandemic. Here we've built, we have a service model for secure SD-WAN that provides security to all those endpoints, home, mobility, and remote sites. Good example is of the use of this type of a service would be a food franchise. Dunkin' Donuts has to connect to their cloud systems to account for purchase transactions and to provide information to web applications regarding activity at the retail storefront. A secure SASE SD-WAN service is how that connection is made. And we go ahead and build that model once That model automates the operation of that service, its assurance, it heals it, and it guarantees its performance for each and every connection that a provider sells. Teradata, very similar model to security. We're providing data as a service. The first initial deployment that we're delivering now is drilling data as a service, which is actually connecting all the sensors on a drilling rig for petroleum prospecting and managing secure connectivity of all the sensors on that oil rig, so the data can be brought into a data pipeline, consolidated, analyzed, and returned to the drilling rig to optimize its operation. Our model provides that service. It's completely autonomous and assured, and it will self-heal, it will self-configure, and self-fulfill. So these are all examples of large-scale service applications that are also distributed. So the implementation of the technology physically is distributed out to what's called the edge and the endpoints of network connected devices and users and systems. And it's the scale and it's the massive distribution that require automation to deliver these services profitably. And these are use cases and actual customer examples of what we are doing today to deliver that value proposition.
So Harley, if you don't mind,
Yes.
can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
In the absence of or in place of your autonomous product, what would these companies do if it wasn't you, or would it be somebody else? I'm just wondering, if you didn't offer this autonomous methodology, what would they be doing?
Sure. What they would be doing is what they do today, which is considerably less in terms of utilizing digital services at scale. They would utilize less of them to the detriment of their business on one hand, and where the services are deployed today, they're much more expensive to deploy because the underlying technologies that are needed to deliver the service are manually mediated and manually managed. So they're much less reliable, and they are much more expensive to run, operate, and actually also deploy, fulfill. Okay? And what we're really looking at right now is a transition from largely consolidated IT services for business in data centers to the distribution of those IT services into cloud providers like Amazon and Azure and Google and Oracle on their cloud sides. And with that distribution of those workloads, millions of users, employees, and users are connecting into those clouds. So the cloud access transformation and the migration of IT services into these large-scale cloud providers is what's driving the scaling requirement. So there's a point right now where demands can't be met, Arthur, because of the manual mediation. So that's why automation is recently a very, very important new area of advanced technology development. It's because automation provides scale, and it provides the ability to distribute these digital services globally. If that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. It's not just a matter of efficiencies, it's a matter of demand, of meeting the demand by automating things that can be repeatable by a machine or a robot.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Learn along the way, I imagine.
Harley, what about, this is Josh here, what about, do we have any types of metrics on the consequence of implementing this system? Are there OpEx reductions and things like that we can talk to?
Yes. The Cox and coding use case, and I have this slide up in front of us now, which provide those metrics, Josh. The Cox and coding use case is outlined here. So what it boils down to is that we we've eliminated 74% of the ongoing operational OpEx of that entire national computing infrastructure for Cox through an automated operational service implementation with one of our system models. And what's also important about those cost savings is that's just OpEx. But if you look at some of the life cycle operations in terms of improving the performance of that national encoding cloud for Cox video services, you can see here that in order to deploy an encoder before, it was a 35-minute job. With the implementation of our automation, our AI-driven automation model, it was a 6-month implementation. It went to 35 minutes. Okay, so it was 6 months to deploy encoding infrastructure, and we brought that through automation to 35 minutes. To assure an alarm, a fault, and what assurance means is define what the fault, what the alarm is, and how to remediate it. That went from 5 minutes to less than 1 second through automation. For things like heat and other issues, we went from 38 minutes to 15 seconds. An upgrade of an encoder went from 6 man-months per data center to 35 minutes per data center. And you can see the annual cost dropped from roughly $2 million to less than $500,000 with the per year in and year out, with the deployment of that autonomous service model. So that's a good example. Another one that's even more relevant is if we look at the SASE services we're deploying right now, the tier 1 security vendor. The operational cost savings are 85% over 2 years, but without the system, they cannot scale into the market with their cloud infrastructure, the market demand for secure business communication services. They have a 200 connection limit on their cloud infrastructure, and the customers they're targeting are tier 1 service providers like Comcast. And Comcast has a customer base of roughly 1.8 million users. So to get from 200 per implementation of secure connections on the cloud-based system to 1.8 million, you can see you have got to automate. And it's through that automation that you achieve the cost reductions. And we've accounted for these. These are have actual real audited numbers behind them, if you will, from an operational perspective. Provisioning time and cost goes down by 98%. Cloud access for network connectivity to the cloud interfaces for access goes down by 90%. Provisioning each service instance, each secure connection, SD-WAN connection, this is an SD-WAN product, goes down by 80%. Updating the security policies on an instance of the service goes down by 90%. Maintenance cost per instance goes down by 90%. So you can see, and again, against that audit, they'd be running at $43.6 million without the autonomous service model and StratOS. And with it, you're running at $6.7 million, which is essentially the cost of our software and our revenue share for the deployment of the services.
All right, so do that number again, the last thing. So you're charging, because you would think there's plenty of room to charge a lot here, right? So
yes,
you're charging how much against how much they're saving?
Well, their savings. What we charge is 15%. This is as a service delivery model. So this security vendor sells these security services to tier 1 providers. Let's take the Comcast example, okay? And what they do is they revenue share with Comcast on a monthly basis for billings. Okay, their monthly billing rates at full scale in that customer base that we talked about range all the way up to about 160 million a year. Okay, in recurring revenue, fully deployed, and we're just starting into this. We're going to be ramping the deployment of these services in Q4. C Street gets 15% of that recurring revenue. That revenue number is the security vendor's revenue through the contract with the provider. We also develop revenue for the initial deployment of our system into the infrastructure of the security vendor's cloud. So we have roughly about $5 million in software licensing and systems to deploy our platform, StratOS, into their cloud to provide these autonomous services at that level of scale. And as the services scale, we participate on the basis of 15% per month of recurring revenue, customer by customer, and then across the product lines that are deployed. In this case, this is a secure SD-WAN product.
So why wouldn't they do it?
There's no reason why they wouldn't economically. And there is also, and they've told us this, they have no other alternative from a systems perspective, not internally, and they found nothing externally.
Got it. Very
good perspective. And this model, by the way, it's called AAS, as a service rev share, is the business model that we've been pursuing for C Street since we founded the company. And the Teradata use case, the drilling data as a service use case we talked about earlier, and then this tier 1 security vendor use case are our first major large-scale examples of global scale revenue on an AAS basis going to market for the company. We're very, very excited about, and these are all cloud native, pure cloud deployed services and systems. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm pressing buttons here. Okay.
Oh, no problem. So with that, I'm moving forward here to the significance of C Street's transformation and how we're executing it. The transformation is really the transformation from deploying technology and having to operate it as a service provider to making technology available as a service to support the rapidly growing demand for communication services, which are generally focused on communications connectivity combined with security and integrated with the endpoints, our phones, our tablets, our computers, industrial sensors like a drilling rig. That's an example of an Internet of Things service. The drilling data is a service application that we talked about that we're building with Teradata. That's an IoT application, but what you see is that remote offices, because of COVID, home offices, what's happened now is that endpoints that need to be connected securely to applications that are now in majority deployed in the primary public clouds are exploding. Those secure connectivity services from the endpoint are growing at in some cases, triple-digit compounded annual growth rates right now. And that's where the automation and the autonomous scaling and what's called assurance, the self-healing and remediation of the quality of that service across its life cycle all have to be automated. And it's driving the demand for our system. The way we're reaching that demand is represented here. It's a form of transformation. So we are working directly with major partners and technology vendors. On one hand, I mentioned Teradata and our tier 1 partner in security. The security vendor, this is a $30 billion security vendor, one of the top security companies in the world. We're converting their technologies into cloud deployed services, as we just discussed, so they can be massively distributed over the networks of a customer target like Comcast. And that's secure SD-WAN with Teradata. We're doing the same thing for Teradata. Their data services and technologies, we're enabling them to deploy those technologies into their cloud and create services like drilling data as a service that they can sell and subscribe to their customers. We participate in that revenue, and through that cloud enablement transformation, C Street develops upfront licensing revenue for our platforms, but importantly, because of the lifecycle automation and the services enablement, we are able to significantly participate in the recurring revenues of the services deployed on these major clouds. And that's our transformation in terms of our business model, but it's also an example of how C Street catalyzes the transformation of not having to operate, run, and manually mediate different technologies to enable services, to enabling technology as a service through automation. And we can transform the business models of our customers and partners through that capability. And on the right, you see the examples of the customers that we already have, that we've deployed with, and we're actively working with right now, that are in the process of consuming digital services and cloud access to transform their businesses. And you can see quite a wide range. A lot of telecommunication providers. Yep.
There's a question from Benjamin, and he's asking, is the pricing model equal for all focus areas, or is this specific for SASE?
Very good question. The pricing model in terms of its value and the way we size it on the recurring revenue front is variable depending on industry segment and service application. In the SASE area, there's a catalog of different services that make up SASE. That agreement for revenue participation with our tier 1 security vendor partner is an overall percentage of total revenue by product, okay? But our percentage of rev share per month changes. It's lower, it's 10%, for example, for a SOHO secure connection, small office, home office, and a secure remote user. And at that level of the market, the revenue per customer instance of the services is quite low, but there are hundreds of millions of users. So the user base is much larger, the revenue per user is lower, and the tolerances are more commoditized, so our percentage rev share is lower. When you move up market into enterprise secure communication services like secure SD-WAN, our revenue share percentage goes up. In that case, 15% is the target there. The numbers of secure SD-WAN connections are lower. They're not in the 50 to 100 million level. They're in the, for example, Comcast at 1.8 million. But the revenue per connection, it's the basis of our rev share, is much higher. It's several $100s a month rather than 15 or 20. So the percentages vary depending on the service and the product, and they also vary depending on industry segment. So in the data as a service rev share model with Teradata, they bill for hourly use of the data services during the life cycle of a drilling rig's operation. That bill comes back to Teradata, and we participate on a percentage basis against that bill. So the basis of the bill is different. In that case, it's the hourly usage against the consumption of the data, quote, data pipeline services, which is the data as a service implementation that we're delivering. Does that answer your question?
Well, we'll hear back from Ben in chat.
Yeah, Benjamin can't answer except in writing, so it may take him a minute. But okay. Benjamin, if it hasn't answered it, please
let me know.
Bring on an addendum to the question. Thank you for asking, Benjamin and Josh, for doing that.
Harley, we've got about 10 minutes left. Maybe it will be important to share a little about our pipeline and our go-forward plan, and what we're here today, and the capital raise we're trying to finish out on.
Sure. Perfect. I'm just going to move back to this slide. So I'll start with pipeline, Josh. Our pipeline is represented in the far right, which are under opportunities. And what you'll see is that we have existing customers, which are mainly service providers, which are direct customers of C Street's. That's Telstra, which is the Australian national telecommunications company in Austro-New Zealand, Charter Communications, Comcast, and Cox. Those three here in North America. We have programs that are internal automation as a service programs that we've had in place. For example, our first production deployment with Cox was in 2015. We're now grown into an automation program that we are working on with Cox to automate the entire operation of Cox Communications. Cox is a top 5 cable company here in the United States. They're very, very large. So what that means is, for example, we're developing utility revenue like we talked about, but we're also actively negotiating a multi-year enterprise contract right now with a minimum revenue target commitment of $3.5 million a year, and then which is for the deployment of automation services within the plant, within their operation. And as we deploy those automation solutions with StratOS, they also generate recurring utility revenue on the basis of the scale of that deployment and the time frame of its utilization. So there's recurring revenue that isn't factored in that minimum commit. I bring that up because with each one of these customers, we've developed long-term programs that generate very nice contracts. Average RPC, revenue per contract, in these programs right now is running between $750,000 and $1.5 million per automation solution. And when we implement that solution, it moves into operation, and through its utility over time, we're generating recurring revenue. Our major focus for scale and pipeline opportunity is with our Tier 1 security vendor. We're launching secure SD-WAN services this year. We've got several contracts that are actively bid right now. Singtel, for example, they're active contract discussions with Hong Kong. They're on hold because of current dynamics there. But the Comcast security SD-WAN use case that we talked about is an active contract use case. And with that security vendor, we're also working with Accenture. Accenture is the third partner for global distribution and integration of the systems, as well as the global sales channel. So it's C Street partnered with the security vendor. We're launching these mass scale products. Accenture is the sales channel to the global Tier 1 and 2 and 3 service provider market globally, and they are the active contracted distribution partner for sales. So we're very excited about the security AAS launch in that three-way partnership right now. We expect a lot of pipeline growth in the utility area through that partnership, ramping as we move through Q3 into Q4, and definitely large scale as we move through next year. Teradata is the same thing. We discussed Teradata and the customer opportunity targets at Teradata for data as a service that we're working on with them are on the drilling slot side, it's Schlumberger. But we also have industrial IoT data services and mobile access network data services for cellular management that are in the pipeline that we'll be developing with Teradata, and they're targeted at AT&T on the cellular access side and industrial IoT manufacturing, robotic manufacturing with Caterpillar.
So Harley, what
yeah.
if we, just in terms of 2020, 21, and 22, what does the projected revenue pipe look like for that?
Sure. So from a revenue perspective, our 19 actual was 3.7. Our estimated for this year is 4.7. And that's we're on the front end of deploying the scale out of these services that we're talking about. And then that moves forward into a 2021 target that's roughly 19 million. And as you can see, we're looking at roughly a bookings ramp here that's moving through to the end of the year of roughly about full pipeline value right now is approximately 12 million in bookings. And then moving through on the revenue side as we move through deployment and then realize revenue through deployment. So depending on we book, then we have to deliver a solution. Average solution delivery can be anywhere from 2 to 4 months, and then a 45-day on average payment interval contractually to realize revenue. And that explains the lag between bookings and revenue.
Is the initial payment you get to onboard something, and I'm sorry not to use the proper words, enough to cover your overhead to deploy that until you get to recurring revenue?
Yes, the margin on initial licensing payments, Arthur, on average is 60% profit.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Super cool.
Okay.
So it's not just covering your costs, it's you're getting.
No, it's quite profitable. I mean, we're all software, and that's a very important question. The reason it's profitable and our pricing aligns to budgets, which are whose tolerances are generally in line with experiences and costs with other vendors in the operational software and systems area, particularly in telecommunications. They look at the cost of software management systems from Cisco and Juniper and VMware, et cetera, EMC, as a comparison. And we're price competitive. We're right in the mean. But the reason we're so profitable is the architecture of our StratO system is modular. So we have all of the fundamental modules built, and they get reused application by application. So there's a very narrow area of basically parameterizing the design of the automation logic and artificial intelligence that's needed for the next automation solution is very easy, and it's a very quick implementation for us from a technology perspective. The most costly part, frankly, is making sure that the design is very well specified. So our profitability in the initial components has to do with the modularity of the system and reuse. That's inherent in the architecture of StratOS.
So Harley, we've got the pipeline. Looks like we're 12 million in bookings for this year. Is estimated over almost 20 million for next year. What are we trying to raise?
Yep. So right. $12 million target round. We've raised 10. We're opening it up to outside investors. And we've subscribed 10 million. That's been done internally. We're at a 20 million pre-money on this round with a $32 million post. So we're looking for an additional 2 million to close this round out.
What's the multiple on these sort of things? Just curious.
Exit multiple?
Yeah.
Yeah. So comps to C Street sit really in the network security and cloud security and cloud, AAS, cloud management area. So you want to look at CloudGenix is a good example. Demisto is a good example. And those multiples run anywhere from, 25 to, in some cases, 30, 35 times revenue. Very, very high strategic premiums. Those are some very good comps that are out there that people can look at.
Yeah, back to your the reason why it's high margin and deployment is it likened to building chunks of blocks of data of developer AI type stuff and then just plugging them in so they fit together well, like the old object programming stuff?
Yeah, yes. So think about using object-based components and recombining them into new automation services is the way to think about it. The simple basic metaphor is, if you have a bunch of Legos, they're different sizes and different colors, and if you array those Legos into different patterns, you can make a car or an airplane or a building. That's exactly the way C Street's architected. The interfaces between the components which exist, they don't need to be developed, are standardized and they plug together like Legos. And what they do is they array hierarchically for the purpose of managing complex operations, and at various levels, the operations are specific to the technologies that are needed to create a service. So you click them together to combine the different technologies, some in network, some in security, some in endpoint or in an application, and you take the components that you need, you snap them together using those standard interfaces. You parameterize the policies. You design the policies that you want to control the consumption of data. We have a closed loop architecture in our system. So it's constantly in real time consuming information regarding the state and the performance of the service that it represents, as well as the infrastructure that service is reliant on, the underlying technologies. And as it intelligently, through the policy framework, looks at that information, it can determine whether its state is correct in terms of its SLA. And if it isn't, it takes autonomous action to remediate. And those actions that it takes are things like self-healing, maintenance, policy change. It may decide to move the deployment of the service because the infrastructure is oversubscribed, for example. And that all happens autonomously in our system. And each one of those actions today takes potentially 10 to 15 to 20 expert engineers and a very long period of time to execute, which is extremely expensive. And then obviously when you throw the market's demand for massive scale and distributed services on top of that cost center, you reach an infeasibility, particularly for service providers, to reach the market demand, market potential that they have. That's why automation technology like ours is so important right now.
Is there
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and that's how the modularity allows us to develop more and more and more and more services for the provider to get them in line with the market, in a position where they can penetrate it, grab that revenue, and do it with optimized margins and at mass scale. It's the modularity in the system that enables that automation transform.
Yeah. Josh, when you were looking at this, is there, and I don't mean to ask Josh at the exception of asking you, Harley, but is there anybody that's on their tail that is doing this sort of thing that could be a threat as a competitor?
Right. So, of course, that's always the question. So in my diligence, Harley and his management team in the earlier days gave me access to both their partner channel and their customer channel. And I had direct access without the C Street management involved to ask direct questions on just that point, Arthur. Who else were they looking at? What was the competition? And in every case, there was absolutely no commercial competition available, meaning there was no vendor that was doing this or was offering those services in a commercially available way. The competition that did exist was really internal. Those are internal competition. So then the question becomes for us and for that customer is, well, how do you make that judgment? As an internal competition, for example, do you build it yourself or do you bring in C Street? And in every case, when we were doing our internal diligence to the customers that were listed on that page that Harley showed, the number of man years it would take for them to actually get to replicate our solution would take them in excess of 1.5 to 2 years. And they couldn't afford that gap to market because they had demand for their services. So the long answer to your question is there is no company today that offers what C Street is doing in a commercially available way that also reduces CapEx and makes it a really strong ROI case for management.
Yeah, and fast. Like the payback is fast, right?
Payback is extraordinarily fast. It's the biggest payback that we've seen in our portfolio companies so far. And it's as Harley mentioned, it's mainly because most of these software solution sets at enterprise customers were built for on-premise and legacy systems. They weren't designed for the cloud. And when you port them to the cloud, they inherently have scalability challenges. And so unless you're going absolutely cloud native, which there's not a lot of opportunities out there for that today, you absolutely need a service like C Street to come in and provide autonomous and closed loop operations.
Yeah, very cool.
Yep.
So how much, I mean, you never know how long this is going to take, but we're going to wrap things up with the raise by the end of August?
Yeah, exactly right. So we raised just a little over 10 million now. We are continuing to invest along the way as a family office. There's a number of other family offices that are continuing to invest along with us. And we thought it would be a good opportunity, Arthur, to come back to you. We've seen a lot of opportunities on your platform before, and it was a good place for us to come and share kind of what we're doing, what we're seeing out there, and kind of eat our own dog food with you. So we're trying to raise just about $2 million to top off the 10. And that will put us at after that, we should be probably at around I would imagine north of a $60 million valuation for the next valuation after. Obviously, we raised $2 million now. That will be $34 million post. The next raise after that should be at least probably a 2x.
Would you need to raise more money, you think?
It's a really good question. So we won't need to raise a lot more money beyond that. We can be able to bridge to our other customer pipelines. However, as the timing of this COVID era where you need mass distributed scale and the work from home is putting significant demand on all enterprises, you're seeing a huge demand coming into top tier security vendors and cloud providers to provide these services. And we actually don't have enough resources today to deploy all of our pipeline.
Engineers, you mean like engineers and that sort of thing, yeah?
That's right. So we would consider raising another raise to add on to the team to deploy, to capture that market share, because we're in the kind of a sweet spot. The market's come to us, and it's ours to grab at the moment.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
The other option, though, just for everyone's clear, should a strategic come to us as we're capturing this market share, and for the right price, we would consider strategic options. And as you can imagine, in the space we are right now, that's also happening.
Yeah. We all can be bought. We all have a price, right?
That's right.
This is great. So if there's any more questions, now's the time to ask them. This is super informative, and thank you for Harley bringing a arcane subject matter down to reality for us. It really was helpful to see how it helps things. My initial sense of what you were doing is to make sure that my Netflix keeps on streaming. You do that, but you do it with the underlying software that is doing that, but make it so it doesn't cost a fortune for Netflix to repair and have all the engineers scrambling and have a gun to their head and worrying about it crashing and that sort of thing.
That's right.
I think you need to.
You know, I would say one thing, Arthur, that for us, it is complicated systems. But to put it in simple language that I can understand, what we really enable is software vendors and communication service providers and large enterprises. We enable those folks to take their products and services and turn them into as a service, right? We all know about SaaS, right? Software as a service. We enable those companies to provide their products not just as a software license, right, in the old days, but we actually enable them as a service. So we are actually core to the digital transformation that is happening right now today. So we can take any software and turn it into a service and digitally transform that business's business model and their valuation. And so that's also what we're doing. And in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. And we do it in a way that makes it cost effective for that enterprise. And we do it in a way that is autonomous and self-heals.
And giving those companies a bump on their multiples.
It's exactly right. Right. I think 25 times revenue is a pretty good revenue multiple. It certainly beats a manufacturing multiple, right?
Oh my God, yes. Please.
Yeah, it's. I mean, just one anecdote here is the security vendor that we're working with. The market value for the segment that we're targeting with secure SD-WAN on their cloud deployment for them, not the aggregate market, is $1 billion market that they've sized in 2 years.
Wow.
So that's how many instances of secure SD-WAN they can believe they can reach through the Accenture channel in 2 years, and that's the revenue target that they have. So it's become strategic for them. That's a $30 billion a year security vendor, and being able in 2 years to reach a market of that size as a vendor is significant. That's, you know, a significant new market, right? So it's all about, and the growth rates, the CAGRs that they're seeing in that segment for secure communication requirements because of distributed work from home. The pandemic has the demand for these services literally running at a 900% increase right now.
I just did the math for you if you were embedded in every project that they do.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's right.
Yep, that's right.
The revenue share is a pretty cool thing in this instance.
Yep. That's why we're very, very intensely focused on that, not just that relationship, but that transform of major technology vendor to AAS delivery, both Teradata and the security vendor, getting into that model. Yep.
Very cool.
It's that rev share. Yep.
Well, any last quick questions, folks, please send them in. We have to wrap it up here in a second. You guys, it was super, super interesting, and thank you. And Josh, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and you're always welcome, and thank you for thoughtfully bringing it our way, and nicely done, Harley. You have any closing remarks, and then we'll wrap it up.
I would just say, I think we mentioned before, but today, this business has been largely funded by internal single-family offices and investors. And we've kept the valuation low so that we can continue to invest along the way without over dilution. Having said that, we're at a $20 million valuation today. And, you know, in my humble opinion, this valuation should be significantly higher, and it will be undoubtedly on the next round. So I wanted to bring this to your network because I thought the valuation was probably fairly low, which gives me additional opportunity to invest in, and any other folks that want to co-invest along with us, on a heads-up deal.
Yeah, super appreciate that. The price you buy a house is more important than what you sell it at, right? So, yeah.
Great.
So,
Great. Thank
Harley,
you.
anything else?
No, not for me. Just thank you, Arthur, for the forum, and it's nice to meet virtually, and looking forward to following up with you.
And
Okay.
when we can get together, I'm buying cocktails at the Baccarat. So come on, or up, or wherever you're going to be.
Arthur, quick question, just functionally. For folks that are either on or came on late or others, is this recorded and will they be able to view it if they had interest?
Thank you for asking. It's recorded. We're going to, okay, we have a question from Ben again. Yeah, so here's the answer to all the questions. We're recording it. We do a little edit, so it takes a couple days just so it looks better rather than raw. We post it on the YouTube channel, but you can download it, do whatever you want with it. And then we'll also give you the list of all the registrants and the people who signed on. There's always a delta between the two, and you can communicate directly with them and send them the deck, or however you want to do it. You're welcome to do so, and they would welcome that. So the answer is you'll be able to view it for sure. It takes a couple days, but it'll be there.
Great. There's a question, Ben had a question about where to contact. Arthur, you can send their contacts to me. I'll field their questions as an investor, and should they want to speak directly with Harley and his management team, I'll make them available.
Super cool. Yeah, we'll do that right away. Great. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for sharing. The only thing you don't have more of is your time, your family office insights, and making a big speech, but I really mean it, about how grateful I am through all this and through the years. You guys have been awesome. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you very much, Arthur.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Josh. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Bye.